Over to you, Dana.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. So this is my second time visiting you. We were talking about, I came to visit you in 2022, talking about permaculture, and today we're going to be talking about land healing as a pagan practice. So if I saw you before, great. I'm glad to be back. And if this is your first time interacting with me, then great. I'm Dana O'Driscoll. I serve as the Grand Archdruid in the Ancient Order of Druids America, and I'm also a druid in the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, and AODA's website's there, and a lot of my writing and my work can be found at thedruidsgarden.com. So I just want to give you a little bit of background about me and why I'm talking about this. I've been a druid, basically an animist bioregional wildcrafty rewilding druid for almost 20 years. I live in Western Pennsylvania. I'm about an hour outside of Pittsburgh, and I do have all of my permaculture design certificates and permaculture teacher certificates, and that's actually a lot of what I do. I have 5 acres with my partner, and we do forest regeneration, organic growing of vegetables, habitat regeneration, rewilding, and all those things. And I am an author of a number of books. And I'm actually going to be talking about, this is Sacred Actions. This is my first book. I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about my new book, Land Healing, and sort of giving you a framework and a way of thinking about land healing as a pagan practice that both has like inner and outer components. So this is my new book. It's called Land Healing, Physical, Metaphysical, and Ritual Approaches. So really thinking about how do we bridge the physical and the metaphysical, what does that look like, and so on. And it's releasing in the United States on March 28th and internationally on May 28th. So a lot of the information I'm providing, sort of the frameworks I'm going to be talking about tonight, are tied to this book, which I feel like I've been writing almost 20 years. So I'm glad it's finally coming out. All right, so let me just start by talking a little bit about the problems. I probably don't need you to talk too much about the problems, but some people are newer to paganism. Some people have been doing this forever, and really the problems are pretty severe for us. On one hand, we are honoring the earth, we are practicing nature-based spirituality, and we're really trying to reconnect with the land in various ways. But we also live in these earth destroying culture. Like, that's just the only way of putting it. We are dealing with the 6th mass extinction. We're dealing with climate change. We're looking at human, and the craziest thing is that the more data that comes out about this, it seems like the less people want to do. And of course, like, all of that is hard enough to be a human, but then if you sort of add on a layer of like seeing the land as a sacred place, interacting with the spirits of nature, interacting with deities that are land-based, like, it becomes really complicated for us. And so there's also this piece of, like, I live in the United States and I'm a white person, and really thinking about how do I address both the ancestral legacy that both exploited and destroyed the land and the native peoples that once lived where I do. So there's sort of a lot of stuff that's going on. And part of the reason that I got into land healing is because I wanted to say, well, how do I become a better ancestor? How do I actually leave a good legacy rather than the legacy that my ancestors left here, destroying people and cultures, destroying the land? Like, how do I, as a white person, sort of deal with this in a way that is, in the way that is aligned with myself as a pagan, and aligned with like this stuff happening? So enter land healing. So what is land healing? I'm just going to start with some definitions. Healing can be either to patch up a breach or division, or being restored to health, or make something once again sound and whole. And actually, all 3 of those definitions fit really well with land healing. So this might be anything from restoring the earth itself. So this could be replanting, regeneration, permaculture, conservation, creating food forests, all of those things. Restoring human land connections. So this is like, how do we teach others about living in a planet that's finite and that has life that's not ours? How do we use nature sustainably to meet human needs? So herbalism or like wild food foraging with a reciprocal practice are examples of that. But also, how do we take up the ancient practice that at one point all of our ancestors did, which was to provide healings and blessings and ceremonies on behalf of the land? A lot of the land where we live is starving for those kinds of things. So it's sort of like thinking about all 3 of these dimensions. Okay, so here is the basic framework. And I obviously am not going to have time to go through all of it because we have a half an hour. So I'm going to sort of talk through parts of it, and then I'm just going to give you an example from my ecosystem. So the most important thing, as we're all pagans, we've all heard this idea, as above, so below, as within, so without. So some people are able-bodied and they are on land or they have access to land and they can do a lot of actual like physical regeneration, right? You know, all that stuff I was talking about. That's permaculture. That was my last presentation, right? Um, or but sometimes you want to do something, but it's in a place you can't do. So I have a mountaintop that's being removed about 3 miles from where I live. I don't actually have the capacity to do physical land healing there. I could at some point when they're done removing the mountain and then they leave, right? But right now I can't. So what can I do? I can do energetic work. And so really thinking about that difference between like, when can I physically intervene? When can't I? And when I realized that even if I'm not doing something physical, I can still do something metaphysical and ritual. And both of those things actually help. Um, so this is sort of the way I think about it. And parts of these two are prevention, education, which I was already talking about, but also self-care. Because, you know, if I'm going to engage with a mountain that is literally being removed, there's a lot of energy there that I have to contend with. And so self-care, self-protection work, grounding work is also really important. And I think the big thing here for me is that we all have something to contribute, regardless of who we are, what our circumstances are. We all can take up this work as part of our pagan practice and as part of a reciprocal practice with the earth, through which gives us everything, right? Okay, so just a couple of ways in which we might think about that is sort of this coming into alignment, recognizing that we might live in this culture that's really life destroying, but we don't have to be part of that. And one of the things that I have found over time that this does is deepening your relationship with the living earth. So, you know, it's one thing to go out and have great writs in the woods. It's another thing to go out into those woods that you have been tending and have a great writ. And there's a huge difference in just that sort of surface relationship, but not versus one that's deeper. Making a meaningful difference. You can actually save lives that are not human. You can save lives. You can create habitat, which right now is so critical. Recognizing that you're part of nature, that part of that is reverence. Creating balance, being a good ancestor, I also mentioned already. If you practice any kind of animism or you work with any deities that are land-based, that's another way of deepening those relationships. Okay, so I can't like talk about a whole book. So what I decided to do is I decided to talk about an issue that's happening where I live as a model for how you might think about land healing in different dimensions. So here is where I live, and that first image in the upper left is all of the fracking wells and deep wells that are currently in Western Pennsylvania. If you look at a map, basically everything that's not on the ridges is like on the plateaus. And that's also where all of the traditional mining happened and where all the steel mills happened. And this is just an area of the country that has been pillaged for a long time. The second image in this corner is an example of a fracking well. This was a place in a forest that they cleared completely. And then they sort of have, you can see they tore it up and there's the well. And that's actually in a place that I've done healing. So I'm going to talk about that. And then this third image on the right here is an aerial view of the Allegheny National Forest, which used to be completely covered, and it's a national forest, but somebody else owns the mineral rights. So we end up with this situation. So here's a great example of, wow, okay, there's a lot going on here. Okay, so working through this, what do we do? Well, the first thing we want to do is not be a bad human being. So human beings right now assume that their will and their sovereignty are the only thing that matters. And for centuries, Western civilization has taken that to mean that I can do whatever I want and I don't have to ask. If I own a piece of property, I have absolute say over every piece of life there. And that's not great for healing, and that really is not in the spirit of paganism. So the first step is observe and listen. What are you seeing? What's happening? Do you see a healthy ecosystem? Do you see damage? What happened? What might happen in the future? So that's your outer observation, but also observing inner, what is the energy like here? What do I sense? What do I feel in my solar plexus, which is sort of the root of our intuition? What do I feel in the gut? And then most importantly, interact with the spirits of the land. Ask them, how can I help? How can I best support you? Do you even want my help? Because if the spirits say no, then I say thank you and move along, because I'm not going to be another one of these humans that imposes my will without the spirit's blessing. So really thinking about like, how do I help, right? And then sort of create co-intentions. So work with the land there. What do you need from me? What can I do now? What can I do later? So the first step of this is just sort of like being present. And this itself could take you years. It could take months. There are pieces of land that I work with that I've been doing this for like 10 years and we still haven't gotten past this step. And that's okay, because part of my goal is to build trust. And if the land keeps saying to me, go away, I respect that. I might come back in 6 months and sit again and say, hey, has anything changed? I'm still here if you want me. Nope. Okay, I'm gone, right? Okay, so then it comes to, well, what can I actually do? What do I have the capacity to do? Can I directly intervene in some way in this ecosystem to assist the life there? So again, this is conservation, picking up trash, scattering seeds. You don't have to own land to do this. You just have to be out on it, right? So I do a tremendous amount of like seed scattering and, of native species that I actually have sort of a thing for the woodlands where I live, the forest. So I go out and I scatter ginseng seeds. Those are plants that used to be there and they're not anymore. I scatter ramp seeds, those sorts of things. So thinking about this physical, like, do I have something I can do, even if it's not my backyard, versus can I do something from a ritual, ceremonial energy raising perspective? Or can I do a mix of both? In the case of the fracking wells, I actually, after conspiring with the spirits of nature for a good couple of months, the spirits of nature would like some of each. Of course, this is not my land. This is public park land, so that gets complicated. So I came up with 3 solutions for this particular area. So one of the things I noticed, and you could see that in one of the photos, is that the wells themselves create substantial disturbances, but they do create a lot of edge spaces, which have the possibility for a lot of abundance. And workers also come in frequently and leave their trash. So my solutions, the first was seed balls. So I made seed balls, and I have instructions for that both on my blog and in the book. And the seed balls are basically 50% soil, 50% clay, and then various native seeds, which you can also gather, or in my case, I grow a lot of them on my land in a sacred grove. And then I gather up those seeds at the end of the year and put them in seed balls and spread them. So I was able to create these seed balls, put a big blessing on them, and then hike around the park and toss them out around the wells, right? I also picked up the trash while singing songs and blessing of healing. And I also worked to raise awareness in my community to fight future wells. So that was sort of the physical stuff I was able to do. Then metaphysically, okay, well, the first question I ask is, what does the land need? Do I want to inject a whole bunch of energy into this place, or do I want to help the place rest and endure? The mountaintop is a good example of this. I don't necessarily want to be blasting the mountaintop that's being removed with a bunch of energy. And I use the sick friend metaphor here because I think this really helps put it in perspective. If you think about a sick human being, maybe you have a sick friend who maybe underwent surgery or had a really long illness, but now they're ready to recover. They're starting to get their spirits back. So what do? Hey, you bring cards, you raise good energy, you bring them food, maybe you play some games. And so you're really trying to help this person recover. So this is like something that has happened that's damaged the land, but now the land can heal. Sick friend 2, though, is like dying of cancer, or they're really, really ill. And this is where you do not necessarily want to come in and be like, hey, friend, wake up. I'm here. You want to actually help your friend rest and maybe be quiet and keep it quiet at the house. That's a really different ceremonial and energetic perspective. And it's really important to know which, because sometimes people get into this and they're like, I'm going to raise a bunch of energy. And I'm like, okay, well, that might not be what the land would benefit from. So in the case of the fracking wells, I asked the spirits of the forest, I said, what do you want? Do you want me to raise energy? Do you want me to do land blessing? They indicated that they wanted energy working to protect and specifically directed towards the wells, allowing the top disturbance to heal, and then doing as much to protect the aquifers. That's basically the message they got. So a couple of us druids snuck up onto the mountain into the public park at night, parked our cars a couple of blocks away. We went up there. And we wanted to do a healing ritual while nobody was around near the wells because it is a public park. I did throw my seed balls, but we pick one well to work at, knowing that our blessing and protection can spread across that whole well network. That's like paganism 101, right? That's like wassail, right? We open up a sacred grove to protect us during the working. We radiate a sphere of protection around the area, protecting the forest and protecting the aquifers from the wells. Then we did some chanting and drumming. We used Ogham. And this is all described much more in my book. We used 3 different Ogham. Ogham is a Celtic tree alphabet and a divination system. And as a druid, we really like using the sacred energy of the trees. We left an offering, performed divination to see what the next steps were, and then returned soon to continue, promised to return soon and close the space. And we did that, I think we did at the fall equinox. So we did it on a time of power. And it was great. It was one of my favorite rituals I've ever done because it was just so sneaky. And then we got up there and we were there. And so then the work continued. I continued to visit this place, and I still continue to visit this place, renewing the protection. I leave healing sigils that I've created and empowered sometimes when I go in. Years pass. This was work I did 7 or 8 years ago now. Many of the wells stopped functioning. Oh wow, closing down. Oh, what a shame. The seeds that I spread spring up, and the spirits of the land hold strong. And the story that I didn't tell here is that there's a whole group working to protect this forest permanently and letting it go into old growth. It's now secondary growth. And I've actually been giving tons of plant walks to raise money for all the lawyers that we need to protect the land. So that's another way that I'm now engaging in education, teaching people about the wells, showing them some of the milkweed that now grows around the wells that maybe I planted there with the seed balls back. It's great. So this sort of gives you an example of this sort of. All right. So some takeaways, because I do want us to have time to talk. Land healing can be both a physical practice of repair, replanting, regeneration, which is incredibly important, or it could be a metaphysical practice tied to healing, to blessing, to palliative care. It can be included as part of your pagan or earth-based spiritual practice. And my suggestion is if you're looking for offerings that are more than lip service, there's nothing wrong with giving a bottle of wine or a loaf of bread you've baked. But if you're thinking about how do I create a meaningful offering that is that actually, has real oomph, that the spirits take seriously, the gods take seriously, doing something like this can really, I think, raise your street cred, so to speak, as a pagan. And frankly, it's just the right thing to do. We can become good ancestors. We can make substantial differences in our local ecosystem, and we can deepen our connection with the land. Land healing is always rooted in care, and it's always rooted with deep listening, reverence, and respect, where we only will work with the land spirits, not assuming that we know what's best. Physical land healing, I hope you get to do it if you aren't already. It's amazing. Fostering ecosystems, bringing them back, converting your lawns into beautiful gardens. Metaphysical healing combined with land healing, with physical land healing or not, there's lots of different things you can do. And finally, human land connections, thinking about how we heal them. So that's what I have for you. I tried to keep it to 20 minutes so we had some time to talk. This is an example of some physical land healing we've done, which just all used to be lawn and sprayed and chemicals, and now it's not. So that's another example. So I will stop my share.
Well, I want to thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. We've actually got about 10 minutes. Before we open it up for people to talk, I just want to invite people to next meeting. The next meeting, we're going to just be able to talk among ourselves. Now, I'm putting it out there as I'm going to be calling it Eco-Kin Check-In, with the idea that this is a time when we can check in with each other. And if you have something that you want to share, this is our group, so you don't have to wait for an open meeting. You can post on the forum or any other way. I'm really, really big into engaging everybody and making sure that everybody understands that they are as much part of this as anybody else, because to me, that's also that's a very pagan, inclusive way of dealing with things. So we got about 10 minutes. So does anybody have questions, comments, thoughts? If not,
I gave you like the absolute like bare minimum, but I gave you hopefully enough to sort of chew on and say, what is a problem in my ecosystem and how would I apply this framework and how have I applied this framework?
Yeah, if not, I would love to hear, has anybody out there done anything that they would think of as land healing? That you can think, and it can be something small. It doesn't have to be, not everyone's got time. I think we have to hold space for the fact that not everyone's got time to go out and, get lawyers and all that stuff. It could be something as small as, like, I know when I go, I live in Oregon and it's incredibly beautiful. I live in forest. And when I go out to my nature parks, I do two things. I always bring a bag to pick up all the trash. And I'm big into, you learn better, you do better. So I will do things like just leave like water for the plants or water with a little bit of nutrients that are good, rather than doing some of the older practices you might see in our indigenous background, like where they would tie things on trees. Well, they didn't know. They didn't understand that was actually could hurt, potentially, depending on what's being done. It can potentially hurt trees. So, that's just an example of myself. Does anybody else have something that they do?
Oh, I had oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, Rhonda, go ahead.
Go, Rhonda.
Sorry. Well, as you can see, I have a lot of hair. So I will save like when I'm brushing my hair or whatever, I save hair and I keep it in my pocket. And so whenever I'm out and about, I kind of look around if anyone's looking, and then I'm like, just say hello to the trees and give them a little something as an offering from me. And anyway, I'm just so happy to be here, and I feel like I finally found my tribe and people that like are talking my language, because I've been doing this for a while, and just and I've always believed in animism, but I never mentioned it. I never talked about it because I didn't want to be judged or ridiculed. And anyway, it's really
we are happy to have you also. Let me tell you, the more the merrier. And by the way, I should have done the either hold up your physical hand or that, just because it's Zoom and we want to be, we don't want to talk over each other.
Yeah.
So I think you were next.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm going to go ahead because I'm good.
Otherwise, I'm Hallie. I just joined, so it's okay. But I'm super into animals, as everyone kept seeing my gecko, my emotional support animal, flashing around. Yeah, she's just Debbie knows who she is. She's made a few appearances on other calls. But something that I'm not sure if it counts, but I was in Johnson Park. I live in North Carolina. So I was at Lake Johnson, which is a nearby-ish park to me. And my mom and I were walking along, and all of a sudden, this couple in front of us stops, and the guy bends down and he scoops something up. So of course I go march over there. There was a big lad of eastern box turtle. He was trying to cross the road, and we were nerved, and all four of us were like, oh, he's gonna get run over by a bike, because there were bikers there. So we moved him politely off the road. And I got a nice picture of him too. He was a big lad, but that was really cool. He didn't try to bite or anything. He just he gave us the put me down right now look. But I think he was very happy. He kind of scurried off afterward. I think because those bikers do not pay attention. They'll just crush. I didn't want his. He was too cute a turtle to accidentally hurt.
Yeah, and of course that counts. By the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely counts. Alex?
Dana, question for you about those seed bombs that you were making.
Yeah.
Is there something about the 50% dirt, 50% clay that's helpful, as opposed to just scattering seeds on their own?
I mean, you can just scatter seeds on your own. I'd like to have them in that format, because you can toss them really quite far as you're going. And a lot those actually came out of a book called The One Straw Revolution, which is they're like old school permaculture, and a lot of people used to do them in cities where there'd be a fence with an abandoned lot, and you could toss them in there. So it's a nice vehicle, and the other reason it's nice is because then if you're adding the compost, you end up with some nutrients to start the seeds, and you can kind of control how many you're putting in. So I like to have maybe like 10 or 15 per ball, and I just sort of scatter. And usually I'm doing a combination of like milkweed, New England aster, depending on what it is. There's like, I have like a full sun kind of combo, and I have sort of a riparian zone combo, and then I've got like a replanting the woodland with medicinal plants that are now endangered combo. So you can kind of do that. And then if you start doing it a lot, like you could cultivate a milkweed patch at your house, for example, and then a couple of years, you'll have more seeds than you could possibly do with, and then you can toss them around. And I also would say, if you have any relationship with children, or adults, it's really quite fun. People love making them. And then it's really great because then you do this blessing, you can just do some chanting around them. And even people who aren't, pagans, they can get into that, and then suddenly you've just armed like 30 people with like 10,000 milkweed seeds, and then now they're all spreading it. So I think the balls are really nice. I mean, I don't use them for like, let me see here.
The only acceptable bomb.
Yeah,
by
I
the
would
way,
say
we
these
have
are
about
like,
we have about 4 minutes. If you
Yeah.
could do me a favor also, and if you can put the link to your site.
oh
so
yeah,
that
sure.
that way people can go and read more detail.
Oh, I think it's on the event details page too.
Yeah, but
yeah.
this also, just in case if anybody wants to copy it, I like to make it so that I like to make things as easy as possible. Marie, I'm gonna call on you. We got another 3 minutes. So Marie, I'm gonna call on you. And Debbie, I'm gonna apologize if we don't get to you. Marie? Or Maria, Marie. I see your hand up. I'll give you a couple seconds. Otherwise, I'm gonna. Oh, looks like unfortunately something's going on. You have to unmute if you want to speak.
You could also put it in the chat.
You can also put in the chat that we can read. So, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and have Debbie speak and see if we can get you in later. Go ahead, Debbie.
I'm going to be quick. First of all, I'm really excited because I pre-ordered Dana's book and I just got it. And one of the things that I do is I'm actually working on food forest, because while I live in the woods, there were no oaks or hazelnuts or any of the native plants that used to produce a lot of the nuts for the squirrels and the birds. So that's what I'm planting.
I think that's wonderful. And we've got about like 2 more minutes. So again, I'm just going to take a couple of seconds to, again, I always want to say how much I appreciate everybody showing up. That's sometimes the biggest thing. Marie, if you want to try one more time, if you either type or speak, if not, we're just, unfortunately, it looks like you might be having some technical challenges.
Yeah, Marie, do you want to just put in, she's unable.
Oh, unable to unmute. If you want to type
in the chat. I do want to respond really quickly to Debbie. So, I think, Debbie, it's really good that you're doing that. One of the things that you can do is you can look at what the forests looked like before colonization and sort of work to replant in that direction. So like I showed you my basket of hickory and hazelnuts. Those are actually all going to go in my forest. I just had them up here for a blessing. I've had them on the porch all winter, cold stratifying. But I think that like saying like how if you're going to do that kind of replanting work, whether on your own land or more broadly, like what did the forest used to look like, or what did that ecosystem used to look like? What had been pillaged from it, like hardwood nut trees, right? And how can we sort of help that forest get back? And sometimes like this is why I focus a lot on seeds, because you can get if you can get the raw materials back into the hands of nature, nature can take over from there. So I think that's a really, really nice. Thank you, Marie. So Marie's currently healing a piece of farmland in mid-Michigan, working with Conservation Office to heal the forest back that had been used as a dump. Excellent work. Yes. I did similar work when I lived in Michigan, actually. With a lot of burn piles and dumps. Takes a while, but it's really good work.
And I think with that, we're going to be, this is unfortunately going to be closing our meeting, but again, we do this every month. And I'm pretty good at sticking to a half an hour because I know, we have to go out there and actually do the stuff. And I want to leave us time to be out there and go and do the things and all the great work you folks are doing. And thanks so much again. I'll definitely be reaching out to see if we can get you back again.
Sure. Happy to come back. Thank you, everybody.
Look,
Thanks
Paige,
so much.
this is Paige.
Thank
She
you,
says
Dana.
bye.
Bye, Paige.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.